let's begin by talking about some of the trends and love to hear your point of view. And again, to the audience, John's point of view are his points of view from all the cumulative experience that you just heard, and they don't necessarily reflect the point of view of the role he's at today. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. So, John, let's talk about first the pace of change and
Oh,
the continuous change and surprises. Talk to us about, as a leader, how do you think about managing rapid change, both in the external environment and, of course, the teams that you lead?
yeah, that's really a very important topic, right? I think we all feel that everybody's working really hard, and the pace of change is accelerating. Um, but I do think there's really two type of change. One type of change is, adding immediate value, but another type of change is the change that is able to scale and to add a sustained value. I think a good leader really keeps the both perspective intact and work really hard to preserve the headspace to develop those strategic long-term partnership and relationships. So when I think about change, generally, I think I tend to break the changes into a couple big buckets. One is I call it must-do change, regulatory compliance, security, things of that nature. And these sort of things are generally not, things we just have to do. The way I look at these things are, it's like building a sport car. If you want to have a fast running sport car, you really have to have stronger brakes. The stronger brakes actually allows you to put bigger engine into the vehicle, and it actually gets fast. So that's kind of the must do, the foundation, the governance, and so on and so forth. And we see the change going deeper and more pervasive. And there's a clear trend toward managing these complexities through automation, through simplification and rationalization. The second big change is really around the digital waves. The digital waves of both in terms of anywhere, anytime doing the business in banking is your mobile, your web presence, personalization, but it's also turning a lot more enterprise capabilities, unlock that capability to go toward open banking so that bank is not a place you go to or app you click on, but it's an activity that's already pre-integrated into your regular business routines. Um, of course, AI machine learning is paradigm change, right? It changes the way how we think about risk management and funding decisions, automations. It's making everything more intelligent, more personalized, smarter. But above and beyond that, what we're also finding is increasingly fintech. Fintech is dramatically accelerating the time scale we're able to implement change. I think there was a time when we all naturally think about, it's every large transformation, 3-4 year time windows.
Yeah.
Fintech is now really changing that the time horizon from a 3-year transformation. In many cases, is we call it a 3-3-3. It's a 3 hours intensive focusing to figure out the problem to solve, 3 weeks to really do a very well thought out solution design, and 3 months to do the implementation, right? So this 3-3 model is becoming, a more a preferred model as we compete in this very intense marketplace.
Yeah, what a great point, John. We saw, for example, ChatGPT got to 1 million viewers in less than 5 days. So the pace of change is accelerating very dramatically.
Mhm.
John, to the point you were talking about, like AI and automation, talk to us a little bit more in how are you thinking of that as both opportunity, and number two is what are some of the risks that you're keeping an eye on as you look at adopting more automation, greater use of AI?
So these two topics are interrelated, but not exactly the same. I do think the business has become so much more fine-grained and complex now. The foundational way to ensure a resiliency it has to start with simplification. Simplification, both in terms of number of assets we manage, but also the fundamental business processes, because a lot of our business processes were really built with a lot of manual handoff points in mind. Having simplified those business processes, the immediate next step should be automation. It's this notion of virtualizing the work so that a lot more the decision making, a lot of more clicking around. It's even today as infrastructure has become a code, a lot of decision making has become a code. There are just incredible amount of opportunities for automation. One degree of automation really is AI informed automation. Frankly, when I talk to my industry peers, we all love, ChatGPT, amazed by what it can do. The fact I was chatting with one of my colleagues, and the fact ChatGPT nowadays can make mistakes, and you can challenge the answer and say, I don't think you are entirely correct. And the ChatGPT was able to come back and give a correct answer and rationalize and explain the mistake it made, exhibits a remarkable human-like intelligence.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's more, perhaps it's sad about ChatGPT, like generative AI, than is actually known. So we're in this interesting stage of tremendous interest and motivation to put the technology to work, but we also need to manage the risk. So I think the general consensus now is front loading the risk assessment, front loading the business case earlier in the cycle. So for example, we used to have a innovation cycle that's 20 plus steps, resembles almost like a project SDLC. We just try to run it with a little bit less of ceremony. But if you look at our latest fintech strategy, right after discovery, we do partner with a few, prominent communities where they already have done the pre-screening. But immediately we do a shift left. We do the testing. And the testing is really based on putting the risk envelope around the initiative and being very clear-eyed on the specific use cases and the business value is able to generate. So really it's playing on both risk and value side and do that early on. And that seems to have so far worked pretty well to have early conversation with the business. I do think there's one positive change, right? A lot of time in the past, a lot of those innovative automation or AI projects tends driven by IT. IT is excited, about certain ideas. The solutions out there looking for problems. I think there is a general trend of both IT and business are really two sides of the same coin, and every business problem needs to be solved with a innovative technology-led solution. And the flip side is without the guiding principles and the shepherding of the business insights and strategy and technology, it just creates a lot of heat sometimes, perhaps not enough light. So I see this as a close collaboration, and that frankly goes into the type of talent, if I may just sidetrack a little bit, the type of talent we hire. We're no longer hiring just people that are smart. We want people who can really collaborate with people and listen well.
John, this is a perfect segue because I was actually going to ask you, so maybe you can kind of tease that a little bit more, which is, hey, when you think about this pace of change, when you think about automation, AI, and you think about kind of eliminating tech debt and others, talk to us about talent, state of talent, and what are you doing to make sure that both internal development of talent, but also getting talent in to add to bolster your ability to be more successful?
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, in this day and age when cloud dominates the technology field, majority of the technology is readily available. Yep. It's in many cases available as a service at an economic point that is accessible for big company as well as for very small company. Talent really is the single most important differentiator. And I think the old leadership mindset of how many people work for me does no longer works. And I remind myself, but also my colleagues and my leadership team that frankly nobody really works for you. They work for themselves. They work for their family. They work for their own sense of dignity. I think part of the leadership is important to create a compelling vision and to enable and empower the right talent to thrive. So the type of talent we're looking for is often is we're looking for people who number one with strong character, because people with strong character, strong talent, they will work hard not to impress you, but because who they see they are. They will naturally attract customers and repeat customers, dramatically reducing the the overhead cost, if you will. And they will naturally be humble enough to recognize it's more important to find the right solution versus being right. So that creates a positive dynamic. And what we're also learning is the right talent. One of the mental model we have implemented, we talk a lot in the leadership conversation, is we want to work with people that we would be happy to entrust our retirement home. Somebody is going to go out there build our retirement home. That's kind of checkpoint number one. Checkpoint number two is, would you like to have this person live next door to your house in your retirement, right? If these things are checked off, so you have a person that is competent, but that also knows to be a good neighbor. And the rest is really about creating the sense of autonomy, but that autonomy has to be guided with a clear vision of change, because without that, it's chaos, right? So this is a constant, interesting dynamic. Overall, the way we see the market is the A players are always going to be in high demand. It has nothing to do with the state of economy, because they're just only a small percentage of population that are just absolutely top of the class, and they tend to produce outsized impact, right? So these talents, we're always in the business of, frankly, listening to the talents, what they are looking for. And what we're learning is, yeah, of course, it's compensation, but frankly, compensation is not the main deciding factor. It's just a checkbox you have to kind of check off. Generally, the A players are looking for a positive working environment where they are empowered, having autonomy, they have the resource they needed to make a change, and they're also looking for, frankly, an environment where they can grow, they can learn from other people's
Yeah.
wisdoms.
You talked about kind of the role of talent, and one of the things you said earlier was, one of the areas that you look for also is to make sure good partners and helping both you and the partner successful. Talk to us about, what role do partners play typically in your organization, and what are the best ones that you find do right? And so that can be advice for the others that, hey, if you do that, you're better partners, you're better part of the ecosystem. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, no, I think this is really a very good question, because every suppliers, if you will, comes to me and say, "Hey, we want to be your trusted strategic partner," and generally we say that's wonderful, but we really want to define what that actually means. In general, we say what that means is you feel the way we feel when we are thriving, and you really want to understand why we're thriving, what are the things we take joy in, where we see value, and the type of culture we want to build. But at the same time, if we are going through a period of difficulties and you are not looking at this as, gosh, another opportunity just to make a bucket of gold, you're actually coming along to say, let's travel together. Let's travel together. Let's understand how we can solve this together, really becoming the extension to each other's team. So number one checkpoint is, how do we, at our heart, how do we feel toward each other? Number two is just like when you're a real team, another interesting measure we use is, do you show up only when there's a check on the table, or do you show up when there is nothing in return? I personally actually encourage my team to reach out to the business, help the business when there's nothing tangible for the business to give back to us. Because what I find is these are the moments where the true character is revealed. In general, people like to do business with people they can trust.
Yeah.
So when you do these things not as above and beyond, but as a reflection of our character, it really builds trust. When trust is there, it really dramatically simplifies a
Yeah.
lot of the conversations. So this morning, right before this call, I was talking to a partner and their senior leaders and just getting to know them at a personal level, their own personal, their family, their personal aspirations. Because the reality is anything that's worth doing, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
Uh, and to find partners you can struggle together and to keep that end goal in mind as you persist through the journey, it's one of those blessings in life. So I personally always try to find people that share similar values and they want to do the right thing, and not because it's easy, but because it's right.
Yeah. Well, John, just on that note, one of the things that reminded me is, you and I have had many conversations, and I know one of the things that's really important to you is giving back, social responsibility. So you think of that as an individual, what you do for the community, what you do, for the overall space. But also, I know that, when you think about corporations, the kind of companies you work for, they're the fabric of their communities, right? They're helping that community be successful. Love for you, John, to share kind of your thinking about both personal social responsibility, but also corporate social responsibility.
Yeah, no, that's really a very important point. I think when we think about these corporate responsibilities, as managers, as executives, we're naturally trained to think about in economic terms. But the reality is to be a responsible leader, we also think through our legal obligations, but also our ethical obligations. And especially when it comes to those ethical obligations, we do have a responsibility to our community. And that's one of the reasons, at Comerica Bank, we encourage our employees to go out, volunteer at the community. We give benefits to our employees to volunteer, frankly paid at the company's cost. But many of the employees go way above and beyond those paid hours and very, very active. And I can share with you one experience. We were traveling in India, right? And a lot of times we go to India, we just sign a business deal, get to know some of the developers, we fly back. On this particular trip, we spent one day to visit the foundation. I can tell you, going to some of the less economically vibrant areas, handing off a bike to a young lady that's first going to the college in her family, that really gives you a sense of why we are in this business for, right? So, and it really creates a reason for a motivation that is much more deeper. As we go through some really difficult projects, large transformations are hard to do. When you go through the migrations, you start remembering there's so many people that in this world, they will love to trade their best days for worst days. And frankly, if you can look at a banking incident as, oh yeah, we got an incident, we got a ticket, we got to follow the process, blah, blah, blah. I done my job and I'm waiting for the next person to come in. Or you can look at that particular payment
Yeah.
is gonna deposit that cash and it's going to make a difference to 200 families. The sense of responsibility and the urgency is just totally different. And these are the intangibles in the culture that builds a strong team, responsible team, as opposed to a team that just do good enough.
Yeah, yeah. John, you talked about a number of areas that are relevant today, and you talked about what is the right way to do it. Talk to us a little bit about when you think about 2023 and maybe even further ahead, what are areas you're investing in more? And then what are areas where you are thinking about and saying, I need to invest less in it? So love to hear your point of view on that.
I tend to think about five kind of broader themes, right? It's number one is strategy, and really spending time to think through the strategy, which is what do we do, what do we choose not to do, right? And one of the story I tell my team is, when you go to a premium restaurants, usually the menu is pretty simple, but they're successful. Nobody is running around, super stressed, but the business stressful. What we don't want to do is open a buffet and do everything, right? So a leader's job is making those critical strategy decisions. What do we do? What do we don't do? And what type of critical capabilities we need to develop to enable that strategy. That's number one. Number two is the operating model. The operating model is a lot of folks think, oh, okay, operating model just another reorg. Uh, the reality is, operating model is a allocation mechanism for the skill and experience to perfectly match with the project and initiatives that are coming ahead, right? Because we naturally have people that are more operationally focused, people who are more transformation minded, people who are more a connector of ideas versus people who are more out there implementing ideas. So thinking through the operating model and to match the structure of the organization to the demand ahead. Then after that is people of the team, the right talent structures, the type of talents we want to build, the type of culture we want to build. How do we make certain decisions and what the implication to the culture? For example, agile, right? Agile methodology. Everybody wants agile, but the reality is we are going to be quite flexible on ceremony, right? And does it have to be PowerPoint? Does it always have to be 200 pages? We're going to be flexible on that. But when it comes to the real content and that justifies a rationalized decision, we're going to be very insistent on that. So thinking through this type of conversations are very, very important. And the next is process. How do we make decisions? Because of what I noticed is as we accelerate the innovations, a lot of the difficult things requires high bandwidth conversations, but the conversation in itself is not decision that propels forward motion. So setting up those mechanisms where we have conversations and broad-based conversations, but also knowing how to turn those conversations into concrete decisions, plans, and fundings and project teams, so we can make meaningful change is really important. And lastly is technology. You may find it odd for a CTO to be talking technology the last. The reality is technology usually is not the constraints. We usually have more than one options to go forward with, but it's all the other elements on top uh, that really dictates the decision making of the right technology to go forward with.
That was a great way, John, to kind of illustrate those points. John, let's turn to success personally. What resources, John, do you rely on to make yourself a better leader?